Welcome back to Deep Thoughts, ladies and gentlemen. Got myself a little short stick here. It is a super cheapy stick. What the hell is this called? Oh yeah, it's called Blender's Gold. I have never seen this before. Actually, sorry, I have seen this, but it's been in my local Walgreens, which is a little drugstore we have here. British people call the chemist. And at least they used to. It's probably a god-awful stick. But it's also fairly short, so we'll keep this episode hopefully around an hour. We'll see. I don't have a timer anymore because my computer is not being used to record the audio anymore. It's probably horrible. We'll give it a try. But today, as promised in a previous sentence in a previous episode, I want to discuss with you guys the subject of satellites. Well, definitely tell you it's short filler. As soon as I cracked it open, it was barfing pieces into my mouth. Okay, satellites. Obviously, there's two groups of people out there, different sizes. There's a group that absolutely positively believes in satellites, and there's a group that tends to not think they're real because of all the other lies and stuff that we hear from NASA. And there's some people that, I would say that, two of the most popular groups are your heliocentric globe earthers, which believe in the classic ball Earth. That is myself. I'm not doing that to get with the crowd. I'm an expanding Earth person. Please see my episode on expanding Earth. But then we have a group of individuals who have dared to think for themselves, called the flat earthers. And I root them on constantly. And, there are varying levels within the flat earth group. And for those of you who get really pissed off at this episode's for both of you. So don't think this is one way or the other. But I do think that there's potentially a psyop out there regardless of what you believe. And it's a very dangerous psyop. And that would be if you don't believe in satellites. Now, to my flat earthers, you still believe that there's an object called the moon and an object called the sun that hovers over a disk 3,200 miles up approximately, as the sextant dictated for hundreds of years, maybe even thousands of years. And because NASA has faked going to the moon, I believe they faked nearly all space travel, including the Mars rovers and all of the reconnaissance Voyager satellites and anything else, the Titan moon reconnaissance lander, just everything. Because in my privileged realm and my coherent realm, I had noticed that the evolution of Hollywood technology happened to coincide with NASA's discoveries. 2001: A Space Odyssey comes out just prior to the moon missions being real. Now, again, I've worked with Vivian Kubrick now for at least a year. Her and I spent 4 exhaustive months, and she was 100%, forthcoming about all the information, and we were able to deduce that Stanley couldn't have really participated in anything. And I had an episode in 26 and 165 where I said that was the case. I am wrong. And so there's a million reasons why. Probably the biggest reason why, other than him not traveling to these locations and being extremely busy in projects right up until the moon mission, and the fact that he was in his living room when this went down. And can you imagine the guy that's orchestrating the hoax is in his living room? That's pretty good. He was also very excited that this went on the air, and one could say, oh, he's excited because he helped fake it. Now, The Shining has a very revealing scene where Danny is, walking up to this room 237, excuse me. It was 217, I believe, in the book. The little kid is playing on a hexagonal carpet. He stands up with the Apollo 11 on his chest and walks 237, technically units, you might say. It's not really the case, but he walks to 237. Some people scramble the letters on the lock to say moon room. insinuating that Stanley's saying, I participated in this. Now, in my opinion, I think 2001: A Space Odyssey was greenlit in 1965, fueled by Arthur C. Clarke, who came out of NASA after being a science fiction writer for so long. He was a genius. I mean, Arthur C. Clarke invented the geocentric orbit. The theory of it that became, I guess, true. Stanley could have been making a statement, but again, Vivian Kubrick worked in the art department of The Shining, and she was tasked with finding the carpet. She brought a bunch of samples back from London, and her father just immediately just came over and just thumbed through them really quickly and was like, nah, I don't like any of these. He specifically said, find me a very loud carpet. When that exercise failed, and he loved his daughter more than anything, one of the reasons why we know he didn't travel to the United States, as rumored, was that he always took Vivian with him, and he didn't fly on planes because he had a fear of dying on a plane. And so her passport looks just like his passport. He was only here in the spring of 1968 to promote his movie, and he's back on a boat back to England. So people like to think that the United States government used a British film studio so that Kubrick could shoot the shots over in England. That's got to be one of the most absurd assertions. You're putting literally one of the most clandestine lies in history in England. You would never do that as the United States government. It's all filmed in various locations. I think they used some studios near Area 51 and some sets in Area 51 because they did build Groom Lake replica at Area 51 before the moon landing. So it's a perfect place to shoot the scene. And because there's no flyovers allowed by 1969, it's a perfect place to shoot everything, and no one's allowed to be there. How convenient they did that. Before 51 was there, it was a bomb test site for nuclear bombs, and so it also has a bunch of craters created by nuclear bombs, so that's also convenient. But the carpet was essentially a guy standing next to Vivian and her father, and he goes, well, because he was upset, he didn't see what he wanted, and so the guy goes, look, I'll just come up with something really quick. Okay, so Vivian and this guy go back to the art room. She watches him put together this hexagonal pattern, shows it to her father. Boom, it's good. So it wasn't a lot of premeditation. I'll make it look like this Apollo 11 launch pads. As far as the sweater goes, it was a friend of the family, this Italian fashion designer who had worked with him for several movies before that. She was sitting in the room with Vivian. She goes, I've been tasked to create and knit this sweater for the Danny character, and I don't know, I'm not from America. What do little boys like in America? And her boyfriend's in the room and says, well, they just landed on the moon. Just do something, rocketish. And so she created that sweater while talking to everybody for a couple days, and boom, she was done. Why knit a sweater from scratch? Because you avoid all the copyright problems that fashion designers can come and rip you off later on. That's why the carpet was also originally created. No copyright problems. They built that whole Overlook Hotel interior in England. As far as 237 being changed to 237, the hotel called and said, do not make it room 217, please. We've got that room. We don't want anyone afraid to stay there. The fallacy that they created was that they forgot to tell Stanley what other room they wanted him to use. So he's just annoyed. He's filming. He's a perfectionist. He's doing anywhere from 20 takes on a particular shot to, potentially 100 takes on a shot. And he doesn't have time for this stupid stuff. And so he just said, well, fine, make it through 237. It was that easy. That's how Stanley rolled with a lot of the ancillary stuff. Now, does Stanley embed image systems that are super deep in his movies? Of course he does. He's a genius. But Vivian told me, look, you have to understand that my father's genius was fluid. He just flowed like that. But Sputnik goes up in the late 50s. This thing they call a satellite. It is hurling across the sky so quickly that no plane could do it and no balloon could do it. In fact, it's hurling across the sky faster than any moon or sun model in the flat Earth model can account for. A ton of people listen to Sputnik, not just government officials. Anyone with a ham radio could pick up its whatever the hell it was doing down to Earth. So a very real event occurs that proves that satellites are capable of being shoved up there in the atmosphere and beaming information down. Now, that was just a proof of concept. There was no surveillance in that thing. We didn't have the camera systems we have today or a lot of the other technology that we have today. And even if we did have it on Earth, we hadn't put it in a satellite yet. Now, some people say, oh, it's balloons, man, it's balloons. Well, balloons do exist. They're called satelloons officially. By the early 60s, they had launched a satelloon. Okay. But this episode's about the belief of satellites or the non-belief of satellites. Now, we watch movies like The Matrix and other movies where there are essentially surveillance situations. Even, believe it or not, The Truman Show sort of had a satellite control system, which was this moon that was hovering in the sky, where Ed Harris's character is in the moon, and it's the editing bay for the entire live broadcast of this Truman character, of which was in a dome, and everyone's outside the dome watching the movie, watching this live reality show. I mean, what a brilliant movie that is. But in The Truman Show, you have a character played by Jim Carrey who is being essentially controlled by this TV show. Okay. But he didn't know the moon was a command center. Now, there are theories about the moon that make it a space station, either a surface space station, or if you study David Icke, he thinks it's completely full of a gigantic space station inside. People do cite the fact that Plato talks about a time before the moon, as if Earth didn't have it and then suddenly it had it. Okay. I think it's very strange. I think it's a very strange satellite around the Earth. It is just, if one, it's in elliptical orbit. Its furthest distance from Earth is 237, I believe. But it's elliptical, so it's kind of an egg-shaped orbit, right? It's not perfectly circular. But even in this elliptical orbit, it manages to keep the same face facing Earth. And if it had any variation in its spin versus its orbit, over time, over 1,000 years, 100 years, we would start to see a new section of the moon on one side, and the old section would start to rotate away. Not the case as far as I know. I don't think anyone's claimed that they're seeing more of a particular volcanic eruption they call craters on the surface of the moon in my lifetime or in recorded history. Yet it is capable of perfectly eclipsing the sun, which is supposedly some random 93 million miles away. The odds of that are probably the odds of us, again, throwing a grain of sand from one touchdown zone on one side of a football field to another touchdown zone, just two people throwing a grain of sand and having them hit each other at the 50-yard line. I think that those odds are astronomically against and impossible. Truly impossible. Yet this is the reality that we accept. So I say all those things, one, to clear out Kubrick so we don't get lost in this whole thing. And the other one is to say, well, there are some funky things about our immediate planet, moon, sun that should get everyone who's so sure about everything sort of towards the fence. Because a lot of people like to feel superior to saying, you're so stupid, you believe something different. Again, genius is holding two opposing concepts in your mind without shitting yourself. I'm going to repeat that a lot for the last half of this season. All right. But now let's come back down to Earth, and let's look at some inventions that we have on the surface of Earth. We have laser technology, which is capable of doing, thermalizing anything. We have directed energy weapons that can do things like make you feel like you're on fire if you're in a crowd. But if you do turn it up, you could tune it to titanium, aluminum, steel, lead, whatever you can resonate effectively. Wood, probably not so much because it is not molecularly dense enough to shake. But, I wouldn't put it past them having figured out a way to do it. But we know we can melt any steel with a beam of energy. We definitely have missiles of all kinds of conventional missiles with all kinds of super duper, C4 type thing. C4 is ancient stuff, man. They've got stuff that's 10 times, 100 times, 1,000 times more powerful. Remember the big Moab that we dropped? It's got some pretty state-of-the-art stuff in it. And if you believe all the specs that are published, you might have been had. If you're like, oh man, I know all the specs of the Moab. It's like, maybe you do, maybe you don't. Yield is the only thing that they need to really communicate with their enemies, right? This thing can liquefy human beings 3 miles away. So just be careful. And everyone else will be so mentally shaken that they'll be useless for the rest of their lives. But we have had science fiction show after science fiction TV show showing you various mechanisms by which human beings completely operate ignorant of a control apparatus on top of them. The Matrix is one of the best. These people are technically in a computer, and they don't know it. Again, I just talked about this in my intelligence threshold episode. We have had sci-fi movies like Terminator 2, which reveal the details of the Skynet system, which is the futuristic takeover of the world by machines. And there's plenty of video games that do this. And so once it's in the sort of the lexicon or the vocabulary or the paradigm conception of man at a fictional realm, you better believe there's people in the government that either fed that story to individuals that snuck out, retired, and wrote science fiction. And of course, the beautiful value to the Defense Department of any simulation of this sort of category is that they get to see the simulation portrayed to the world. A lot of thinkers, from creative 3D artists to writers, coming up with potential scenarios. And then they air it on television or on a silver screen and they watch the public react to it. You might be in a review session with someone and they're, trying to get your opinion of a movie, of a story. And the only thing that they're really trying to do is figure out how you're reacting to this real story because they've got the real technology. I just rewatched the interview with the von Braun's secretary. Werner von Braun was the brainchild of the V1 and V2 rockets. He was the brainchild of all the rocketry that NASA created to get to the Saturn V, which fueled the hoax to the moon. And by the way, that rocket, I just watched another reel of it launching, and it never blew up. The Saturn V never blew up. And that's a tremendous accomplishment considering they launched it, 10 times? Phenomenal. 7 trips to the moon where men were supposed to get off. 13 doesn't do it, but 8, 9, and 10 also did it. That's 10. Amazing. It's pretty much a bulletproof rocket at a time when 2 years earlier, rockets were just blowing up on the tarmac. And Russia's last moon mission rocket blew up. They blew up so bad they canceled the whole program because they realized the delta between not getting it to blow up and then going into orbit and trying to escape orbit to go to the moon. They said, look, we have more thrust power than the Saturn V because our rocket's smaller than Saturn V and we can't escape Earth's orbit. And then 1995, NASA starts buying their old motors that they built in 1973 off the Russians. But we hate the Russians, of course, because they're so bad. Okay. So we also have things like the Hubble telescope. I don't believe the Hubble telescope exists at all. I believe it is the Sophia 747 with the same exact optics in it. And they'll tell you the Sophia 747 has the same telescope in it that Hubble has. We had a mistake a couple years ago where a picture of, I believe it was Jupiter, was released from the Hubble, from the Sophia, and from an observatory in Germany, all claiming to have taken the same photograph. And obviously, it couldn't have been that way. One of them did, and 2 of them didn't. The gentleman that called NASA up from Caltech and said, he was a machine learning kid. He's a grown man, it sounded like to me on the phone, but he published his phone call and he talked to this dude at NASA and said, this international database of all launches such that we don't launch on the same day, get in each other's way so that we can track debris and just know what's in space versus what's fallen and that sort of thing. He says, I can't find the Hubble telescope launched. The launch doesn't exist, which I believe was 93, I think. He says, what I do see in the database are the space shuttle launches that claim to be repairing the Hubble telescope. Why would that have launched and had a problem immediately and then be repaired later? Well, remember, NASA's in the picture game. If they can't 3D render or have an artist create the photographs that are going to convince the population that a vehicle's in space, then they have to come up with an excuse why they're going to have a multi-month delay, a multi-year delay, until they get it right. Then it'll be incredible, right? They'll have this ILM engine inside NASA to create fakeness. That's why I think the 98 rover to Mars crashed, because I think that they knew that they were going to be biting off a lot more data, a lot more images. It was supposed to last a lot longer, and they simply didn't have the fake imagery to sell to the public, so they waited 3 years to relaunch and get it back out here. And of course, they have a couple years to wait until it lands and then does its thing. I was in the house here when one of them landed. But now they've run, 18 years and they're only supposed to run 11 months. Hey, it's a profit machine. We sell pictures. They buy it. We get $60 million a day. And our subsidiary, Jet Propulsion's Laboratory, or I should say Jack Parsons Laboratory, makes another chunk of cash. The reason why flat earthers should believe in satellites is because you believe that the moon and the sun are up there. You can't explain it. There's this buoyancy thing, which may or may not have anything to do with anything. But if you want to rethrow everything from a sphere to a disk, then let's acknowledge the fact that there's two giant objects up there, regardless of how small you think they are and how close you think they are to the surface. They're up there. So we should be able to usurp the science of that to throw our little pieces of machine up there. Who knows? Saying that there's satellites up there, which is what I'm going to suggest on this show, does not mean that everything else they've said that's up there is up there. So I'm not saying one validates the other. But here's my concern that I alluded to in a previous episode. If you are convinced that these things can exist, and all this incredible technology, both the technology you're fully aware of and technology that you're not aware of, goes into space, then you might be in for a big ride, and not a good one. You might even have a leader that's elected that you think is capable of manhandling all of this globalism and control apparatus down, at least over your country, and it's not true. Who knows? Now, I had a very good friend of mine who worked on some pretty covert satellite technology. I learned all about it. I learned about all of its stages, and it's really sort of boring today. If I were to reveal what I learned, I won't reveal it. There's no reason to. But I did hold in my hand, as I've alluded to and admitted to several hundred episodes ago, a schematic of this thing. And it was very real. It was very well thought out. It wasn't a Gen 1. I don't even know what generation it was, but it definitely been the result of some tests that had failed. But they got it right. And this thing was supposedly deployed in space by 1988. And if you remember the space shuttle launches, it's very important. We were always sold a bill of goods that the space shuttle is coming up with all these experiments where, they're going to find different metals that can form zero gravity and form better, plant life in space, blah, 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 man in space. But very shortly after the space shuttle program started, I'm going to guess, just from my recollection as a kid, probably 2/3 of these launches were covert. So you'd see the space shuttle launch, and then it was, get safely into orbit, and then nothing. It says this is a covert intelligence satellite, military satellite, and the feed goes dead, and they deploy this thing. We don't see anything. We don't see the shuttle doors open. We don't see the Canadian arm grab it and put it out there and then turn it on. Now, I was told, again, 30 years ago, that there is no need to have man escort a satellite into space. That is a fallacy. You can launch it into space on a rocket, especially in 2020. But now let's go back to Earth, and let's go to 1958. And for those of you who are HARP fans, HARRP, this is a antenna technology that we use on Earth to beam powerful waves of electricity towards the ionosphere, bounce it off the ionosphere, and it comes back down crashing on Earth. This particular antenna, this is not a conspiracy, okay? This particular antenna was patented by, I believe his name is Bernard Easton. If it's not Easton, it's Eastman. And he patented it for earthquakes, weather manipulation, and mind control, in addition to a bunch of other benign crap that we don't care about. Do you need any more than those three things? And it's all based off Tesla's patents as well. So they stood on Tesla's shoulders. And this is literally being patented within 15 years of Tesla's death. How ironic. So how do those three technologies work? Well, weather manipulation is actually probably fairly interesting. I think creating a high pressure system would be the easiest thing, which would erase storms over a particular area, which is usually the giant threat. High pressure systems do what? Every time the weatherman pointed at the H or the L on a weather pattern when you were a kid, high pressure means pushing down. Pushes all the clouds out of the way, and you have arid desert conditions underneath. You have summer in Southern California where it doesn't rain a lot. That's why they built Disneyland in Anaheim. It had very low rain quota. But of course now it's climate change. You know, the shit we've known forever, it's climate change now all of a sudden, right? As far as creating a low pressure system, not quite sure how that would be the case. Maybe HARP does or does not participate in low pressure systems, but that would obviously be trying to create a system where you're perhaps diverting low pressure systems around by punching down around it. You know, you create some high pressure systems and it's just like, you know, pushing something across the table by pushing next to it, you know. Earthquakes. Well, what's funny about it is I will tell someone that factoid and they will, oh gosh, you know, how could that happen? Da, da, da. It's like, hey, the patent was awarded for all three things. I don't know if you've ever filed a patent in your life. I've been involved with patents since I was 18 years old. And you have to prove what you're claiming. Otherwise, you do not get the patent. Patents are often abandoned. So you'll actually have someone say, so-and-so filed a patent for time travel. And they'll send you this hyperlink straight into the patent office. And it's got all this crazy coast-to-coast stuff on it. But if you read the top part, it says patent abandoned, which means you can apply for any patent in the planet. If you can conceive of it and write it down on paper, you can send it and spend your $2,400, but you can't get it passed. And so it just sits there and dies. I've been involved with patents that died too. So when I tell you that there's a patent in the patent office awarded in 1996, applied for in 1994 for the cure to AIDS, and people laugh, it's like, well, he got it. The dude got the patent. They take your blood out of your body through a transfusion, treat it with the silver, cleanse the silver out of your blood and re-inject it in your body, and you don't have any more mutations. They can just keep going until you don't have any. All right. You can't get a medical patent unless you can prove it medically works. So knock yourself out. But the way that it works for an earthquake is that you create this extremely intense wave of energy that is going to resonate a tectonic plate. Obviously, you're going to go where it's really volatile anyway. So if we had a plate that was really stressed, they just add more stress. It's already stressed. And you might think, well, an antenna from Alaska is going to make an earthquake underneath a nuclear facility in Iran the day after they kill Soleimani. Yeah. It's just like the wind that made the bridges in the 1930s flop around until they exploded. What if somebody said, I'm going to put so much wind on that bridge, it's going to fall apart? Most laymen, like myself, before you see it, we go, no way, man. It's a bridge, dude. It weighs thousands of tons. No way. And then you watch it and you're like, oh my God. And this, the architects go, yeah, it's at the exact frequency of the bridge's tension. And so it just nudges it until the point it starts to swing, and it becomes this perpetual motor of death. Since the actual schematics of HARP have never really been published for anyone to analyze, we're not sure how intense that beam can be. But if you look at the array and read the basic physics of what they say they do, they roll this antenna in a big circle until they create a vortex. And a vortex is an exponential creation of power. It's an exponential rooting of power. So you're at 1x when you first turn it on, and then who knows? Maybe it's 100x, 1000x, 1,000,000x by the time it shoots that thing in the sky. This is technology on planet Earth. Now let's go for mind control. Unlike an earthquake situation, mind control is probably phenomenally easier. Why? Because the human mind operates on a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of a volt of electricity. Its amperage is nothing. And so its wattage is nothing. It needs nothing to start to manipulate the ability of the mind in a very obtuse way to have a particular spectrum of emotion available to it. It's probably obvious to you that when you're calm, your frequency in your mind is very, very long wave. It's very relaxed, And then when you are excited and terrified and in a state of fight or flight, it is as tight of a wave as it could possibly be. And your synapses are working overtime, just like some, fictional sci-fi UFO engine that's just about to explode. And so that antenna merely has to figure out a way to gently put down a very minute amount of electricity that will penetrate the skull and create these obtuse feelings. Now, is that a huge threat? Making you feel bad or making you feel good? Obviously it is. If someone could take it to the next level and say, look, we have figured out the state of mind that is depression, the state of mind that is depression to a suicidal level. And so if we want to depopulate without getting caught, we merely beam onto a major city like Tokyo, New York, LA, this suicidal wave, and then we just watch the news the next day. And we won't learn about young people and nobodies that, aren't famous like you and me, but we might find out that Robin Williams takes himself out. Someone who's already on the edge anyway. And the military profiling people, they go, hey, what's beautiful about it is most people that are probably going to take their life have already been on the very edge of doing it anyway. And so when they do take their life, there's no conspiracy that pops up because every family member can say, yeah, they had attempted it before, or they were very depressed. Like Robin Williams was suffering from dementia and Alzheimer's. One of the two. He was frustrated with his career. So if he finally gets pushed over the edge, well, everyone's got a backstory. It just flows like butter. But this whole thing with HARP, think about what it's really doing. It's pioneering electrical technology that can be shot from the Earth, off the ionosphere, and back down to Earth. But what if that's just a prototyping mechanism before the technology is then wrapped up inside of satellite technology that is used then to beam down to Earth? Now, do they have jets that have all this technology in them? I think some. Where you need an infinite power supply, you need space. You need the Van Allen belts with infinite electron clouds. You can't handle the amount of electrons that are out there. Man could not build one machine that could take any full-blown cross-section of the Van Allen belts and use all that power. It would vaporize whatever we would try to metabolize, at least the current technology that I am aware of. What is one of the greatest concerns of the modern era? Well, in America, because we don't have Agenda 21 as something that is anything other than a conspiracy, but the EU meets on it every 10 years and has plenty of council meetings every day on it. We just think surveillance. Surveillance, cameras everywhere. Our government has broken our Fourth Amendment and they eavesdrop and steal everything. You know, if the NSA structure is correct, then at least they put it behind a closed door. No one can look at it unless you have a FISA warrant to go in and look at a particular individual, and then you have to prove your case. But we just watched the FBI, the CIA, the DOJ, and the current, Obama administration with Secretary Clinton purchase and fake a dossier that can make anyone susceptible to a fake investigation. Well, it's a real investigation using fake credentials. So the FISA court has told the people we are completely inept and we can be duped easily. In fact, we are so inept, we don't even ask the most basic questions. Is this source reliable? Prove it. Had either one of those questions been asked, President Trump wouldn't have been spied on before he became president. Okay. Now, in the EU countries, where Agenda 21, which was launched in, I believe, 1992, signed by 159 countries, and has been above board the entire time, they are getting rid of rural Europe, pushing everyone to major cities that are concentration camps of surveillance. And again, I'll tell you this 100 times, go watch THX 1138 and pay attention to the level of surveillance in that movie. George Lucas's first movie. It was his student film in college, and he got enough money to pop out and do it in real life with Robert Duvall. It's a great movie. It's a great fascist, crazy Agenda 21 world. That's what THX 1138 is. It is the fully implemented Agenda 21. The world is depopulated 99%. And whoever's left is inside of a horrible, tyrannical world. You're governed by a bunch of robots that look like bike cops from Chips from the late 70s. If you look at a California bike cop, but you turn the face into a mannequin of chrome, that's what the robots look like. Well, what's going on with robots today? Boston Dynamics, anyone? Was it Toyota and Sony? And all these big players, they are not going to miss out on the robot empire that's going to govern the people. Sadly, there's going to be probably a margin in history where these robots are going to be used for war against people that don't have them. And that'll be a wholesale slaughter of human beings. But we don't have the power supplies yet. We don't have the actual robot designs yet to endure desert conditions and tropical conditions. But they're going to get there. In 20 years' time, I'm willing to bet we could have a special robot that's a sand robot that just, no matter how much it rolls around in the sand, nothing gets jammed up. The power supplies will be mysterious to us, but they will be zero-point energy systems that will function forever. It'll be like Iron Man's little chess piece. And once you have infinite energy, just think about it. The Iron Man suit becomes plausible all of a sudden. What sort of energy comes out of his palm? Well, it looks like to me the fictional reality of that, the real reality of that fictional suit would be a plasma beam. Wow. What could possibly endure a plasma strike? Not a whole hell of a lot. You could have depleted uranium tanks and this stuff will go right through it like butter. Okay. So, Americans have a bit of a hubris about our Constitution, about our willingness to defend ourselves. Yeah, we are definitely that breed that will fight. And I think there's plenty of countries that will do that. And there's plenty of people in all countries that will do that. But we're a whole country of that feeling. We don't cower down usually to our rulers in great numbers, which is why we probably have nearly 1 billion guns in households all across our country. But now think about it. I'm going to give you a scenario. You're going to have someone like me who completely believes that satellites exist. With whatever technology and whatever reality is out there, they're able to stick something in space and keep it there for long enough to cause me some huge problems. But then we'll have a whole nother group of folks that have indoctrinated themselves away from satellites, unnecessarily so, to prove a point about the shape of the Earth. Again, one does not negate the other under any circumstance. The moon and the sun are satellites. So it's probably not so smart to say satellites don't exist as some a la carte epiphany as a result of believing the Earth is a flat disk. Ironically, this little patio table I used to hold my new mic unit is a round disc with a nice black edge on it. But let's just say the EU doesn't die. The people of Europe continue to cower down to this Hitler's daughter, Merkel. And it just gets more and more powerful. Thank God. Brexit's about to happen. We need, I don't know what you call it, Deutsch exit. We need France exit. We need Italy exit. We need them all to get out of this thing. We need to have those people in a Nuremberg trial. Let me just tell you. You really got to start moving, man. Rosa Corey will tell you all about Agenda 21. Just look her up. Her last name starts with a K. If you just look up Agenda 21 Rosa, R-O-S-A, you're going to find all of her stuff. Don't just watch one. Watch like 10. Yes, you're going to have about 12 hours to do it, but you will become so immediately informed that you're going to probably for the first time in your awakenness go back into a state of fear for at least a few days as you start to mulch this stuff. But I'm going to give you a Red Dawn scenario with the end of America. Why do Americans feel safe? Well, we have a Second Amendment to protect all the other amendments. Okay. And let's say that for whatever reason, all the good presidents are gone. They throw the votes. Nobody fights back. Nobody hangs anybody for, submitting fake votes to a voting machine, allowing illegal immigrants to vote. And so we lose, technically, our Second Amendment. But a bunch of people then buy guns off the black market and they keep them hidden. Now, this works both ways. Even if we don't lose our Second Amendment, the scenario I'm about to give you is bad. There are ways to get around it, but I don't think too many people think about this. And there are things that they can do to make it 100% effective for their plan. So they try to seize this country. Hey, Obama was just about to sell the whole place out. If we were to have like 4 Obamas in a row, then you wouldn't have America anymore at all. Everything would be illegal that was the Constitution. Freedom of speech, gone. Second Amendment, gone. You think Fourth Amendment's been violated to this point? It would be beyond gone. Your due process and your speedy trial, gone. This crazy impeachment they put on Trump for no crimes, that'll become you. And while you looked and said, I hate Trump, he's a dick. Okay, then that's the trial you get. You get no attorney, no representation. There's no discovery, meaning your side gets the same information they have. And they put you in jail for no crimes because that's what you allowed to happen to Trump. This is why it can't happen again. It's a bad thing. It's an IQ test. If you're for the impeachment, you're failing the test. Because if it ever happened to you, you would cry foul in a second. All right. You're in your house. There's going to be 2 scenarios. There's going to be the urban scenario, and there'll be the rural American scenario. Now, a takeover is not going to occur in Kansas, at least in the country. It won't happen in Montana. It won't happen in most of Texas where no one lives next to a city. Okay. So the cities go first. There'll be these robot troops that have little blue helmet paint jobs, little chappies. It's all EU stuff. UN stuff. Maybe they come up with a third brand that's just like the new America. And they're marching down the street. All these robots do, while everyone's afraid of all this super duper AI, lowbrow AI is taking care of the game. They've been outfitted with thermal sensors. They can read through walls. They've had that for 40 years. They have infinite rounds on them. I mean, if it's plasma-based rounds, it's like a laser rifle, which has no ammo. but let's just say it did have some ammo. It's got the 5.56 to go really deep. Maybe even has a 20 cal cannon on it, depending on what's there. And maybe they're all in a big formation. So if there's someone behind a bunch of barriers, but they can sense it's there, they bring out the huge 20 cal tanks that just blow right through the walls. For everyone else, it's a little 9mm here and 40 cal there, maybe some 308. And they're just cleaning out an area. There's a Ford group that just announces you have to leave. And they wait. And for anyone who holds out, like Anne Frank in a attic or a basement or behind some fortified safe room, the second wave is going to take care of them. And so there's physical extraction of areas so that they can be completely dominated and turned into an Agenda 21 concentration camp where surveillance is everywhere and no one is ever free again, ever. All right. Their game would be to probably, in certain areas, level the whole place flat because they don't want to keep the ghettos. They don't want to keep those buildings. They're not good for surveillance. They're not good for reconstruction. I mean, they can't go in and just install cameras and it's all going to be okay. Some buildings are going to be fine. Like maybe a projects building. It's just fine. This is as long as it's structurally good. They can always go in and put all the cameras in there. You know, you toy with the camera. It's probably a death sentence after that point. So this fleet of robots can go in and clean everything out. According to some Geneva thing. It's for the greater good is what they're going to tell everybody. And of course, all the meek will tell on their neighbors. So that's going to help out as well. All right. Now, once you get captured, because you're going to be pulled out of your house, we have over 1,200 FEMA camps in the United States of America as they currently exist today. And that fact, that statistic is 10 years old. I want to hear that our president's shutting those things down, bulldozing them down. They no longer get to be called that. Now, some FEMA camps are really beautiful, you know, almost used exclusively for filtering immigration violators. But a lot of them are like Korean death camps. I mean, it's crazy. They're not even as nice as Auschwitz, okay? And so you'll be evaluated as an individual. Who are you? We've got a big AI database on who you are. Every single thing you've ever said on a telephone call, email, social media, etc., in earshot of any camera or whatever, where your face was identified saying a certain thing, we're going to measure your level of dissonance, and dissentment against the government, and you're going to be probably executed immediately if you are a really volatile person. There might be, as rumored, a B line. The A line is immediate death. B line is see if you really meant what you said or something, some rehabilitation, last minute thing, but you have probably a 70% chance of being assassinated. And then C and D just keep diminishing to the point where the D is for docile. And you just sit and starve in this place until they tell you where you can go. And you're going to feel so lucky if you're in the D. I didn't get killed. I must have done something right. Yeah, you sold out everybody. That's why you're in D. You're the dunce. You're the degenerate who sold out your entire species. So be in the A is my recommendation. If you don't stand for anything, then you stand for nothing. So let's say that there's areas where these robots are very, very effective according to their current design. But now let's go out to the rural areas because that represents at least 50% of the United States population. Are they really going to make robots go all over the countryside? Seems sort of inefficient, doesn't it? That's where satellites become phenomenal. It also lends itself to cargo jets with the same equipment on them and other very specialized aircraft that have the same systems on them. Again, those same directed energy weapon planes that are used to start fires all over the planet. You know, they don't have a lot of cargo space in them, but boy, they get the job done, don't they? So what are some common denominators of weaponry? Well, there's the gun itself, which usually today it's a bit of ceramic and it's a bit of steel. Usually the pin is always steel. So even if you create a fully ceramic gun, you 3D print a gun, even the hammer inside, the pin mechanism is all ceramic and it works. Well, what are you firing? You're firing bullets. Well, bullets can be made of all kinds of different stuff, but it's all metal, typically. Now, you could potentially, I don't know how you do a bullet that's completely ceramic. Maybe you can. I have not studied whether or not the ceramic guns do bullets that aren't made of steel. Okay. What did we talk about earlier? Directed energy weapons. They exist for sure. They've been admitted to exist. I've got one friend of mine that created a tiny one in his factory floor, and he was vaporizing paper clips, which is like pot steel. Not so hard. But now, with a satellite, different than a plane, the amount of energy you have available is phenomenal. So you take little country towns and rural areas and you zap them. You zap them for copper, lead, steel, aluminum, maybe titanium, everything in the spectrum that could be used to construct a gun and to construct ammunition. Now, your Second Amendment doesn't exist anymore. Maybe even your house starts to fall apart because all the nails start to get blown up. They don't give a shit. This is the takeover, baby. And so your car falls apart out front. But maybe the system has a little bit of artificial intelligence and sees warm bodies, and maybe it tries not to hit a body. It won't hurt you, is from what we understand, unless you're holding on to something and it turns into like a 2,500 degree piece of steel, or hotter, Celsius probably. So very quickly, everything that you would use to fight back is gone. In fact, your technology to communicate with the outside world disappears, because your cell phone is going to basically be EMP'd by this technology. Your radios will be EMP'd. Your television will be EMP'd. Everything that creates communication with the outside world is gone, and so your world goes dark if you don't get killed in the process. It's probably going to create fires as well if your house doesn't collapse on top of your head. Maybe it's a good time to build everything out of bricks again and concrete. But I'm getting ahead of the plan because I think the plan would involve a lot more strategery, okay? Remember we talked about mind control? I don't think they want to create too many earthquakes because that disturbs the soil and their ability to develop these urban concentration camps. They don't want the world all messed up on the ground. That'd be a last-ditch thing, and I don't think they would do it. But so you have a fairly, maybe you have 800 people in a little town called Thayer, Kansas. Hate to pick on Thayer, but there you go. Great steaks in Thayer, let me tell you. It's on the 169 south of Chanute. Just ask where they serve steaks and just say, okay, point me there. But remember the mind control thing? What if the very first thing they do is put you to sleep? Or make you feel very afraid? Or maybe even make you feel really docile. You're just sitting there going, hey man, this is cool, dude. Hey, the TV went out. Oh man, that's groovy, dude. So whatever algorithm they think is going to be most fortuitous to their next phase, which is to zap everything that could possibly be a weapon in your house, including the house itself, maybe it just turns into a bunch of fire, just like Paradise. Maybe they even have the wherewithal to say, we're going to beam down a message that says, you better leave your house because it's about to be on fire. You're only going to get one warning. Maybe. Everything takes effort and energy, so don't be surprised if there's no warning. All right. So we should assume that an overwhelming majority, a 95 to 99% of people in the world hiding in their homes or being in their homes would be effectively destroyed by these two pieces of technology. And believe me, it's not going to be search and destroy. They will have already searched for you, found where you are, and assessed everything for probably a decade before this kind of thing would ever occur. So there's no place to hide, man. But let's just say, for whatever reason, there's an area that's causing them problems. Maybe there's a derelict facility made of cement, and a lot of people are hiding in that facility. Maybe you're smart enough and rich enough to dig a huge bunker. Maybe you can pawn it off as a tornado shelter or whatever. It's like 30, 40 feet underground. It's really reinforced with 2 or 3 to 10 feet of cement. Cement's pretty cheap. You just do it. Now they can't really see you anymore, but they know you're there because they can see this lump in the ground that reports back a structure. Satellite technology? Well, maybe not. Why use satellite technology for that sort of thing when we have bunker busters falling out of our asses? So it goes over the radio. Got one. Drones come by with these heavy bunker busters. They don't need to be delivered by human beings, but I'm sure they could find a bunch of folks that are completely loyal to a fake story to create this third phase. Mind control, guns being melted, house set on fire is really all in one shot. And then the third phase would be anyone that has a problem being told what to do. Could be bunker bustered out of existence. Doesn't matter if a guy's running down the street with his M1 rifle. That's just going to vaporize in his hands. Knock yourself out, dude. We don't need to worry about that, dude. If they cut off all the food supply and electricity from the area, this is they shut off this electricity to the area. That's already a bad news situation. But some guys like Ted Nugent know how to hunt and clean and eat. But you're reduced to the Stone Ages overnight. Because all modern technology has been fried. Now, you got a car. Who cares? You got a bicycle. It's gone. Unless you made it out of wood, you got damn near nothing. You probably don't even have the wheel. Maybe you got an old... well, the Amish should do pretty good, right? Amish is like, oh, the phone doesn't work. Okay, that one phone call we make a month with the approval from the High Council doesn't happen. Okay. You see how easy it is? You may say, well, that's not easy. Well, you're right. But you don't know how many decades they've been planning for something like this. This is why I don't want you to pan and pawn off the existence of satellites. It's already bad enough that we allow our government, for the sake of national security, to have a bunch of technology that we are unaware of. And there's two sides to the technology that we're unaware of. There is technology that we're unaware of that we could prophesize to say, look, we know that they have, say, railguns. Railguns that can shoot ceramic projectiles so damn quick to turn a building inside out in a second. There's this mezzanine where you and I can conceive of it, but the average population can't conceive of it, and that's mind control. One of the greatest little rabbit holes you can go down is to go into YouTube and search on CIA mind control and listen to every single episode that you can find. And one of them is going to be a guy in the mid-90s who said, I guess it's in the mid-90s. If nothing else, he's referring to the mid-90s. And he said, by the mid-90s, we had it completely under control. We can control anyone's mind. Now, luckily, the brain is a three-dimensional object inside of our heads. And the neural patterns that need to exist within the brain to create any one emotion are a three-dimensional pattern of electricity being configured in our mind. And so an obtuse wave from the outside most likely can't organize all the electrons inside your mind in a three-dimensional way from space. And it probably never will be that amazing. So in order to make you think about, a quote out of a movie, it's probably really tough. But again, overall fear, overall docile nature, probably not so hard. Now, there are also very simple ways. When I teach my students neurology as it relates to the experiencing of fictional things like screenplays and video games, I always give them a little experiment where I'll clap my hands together, and one little clap, So I smack them together and I say, look, I tell them what's going to happen, so I don't be one of those dicky teachers, but I just say, I want you to feel your heart when this happens. Feel the way your brain feels. Feel how your bloodstream just, got a little bit higher in pressure. Those of you who like the sound of my voice and you say you go to sleep to it is because I'm a very relaxed guy and my voice reflects that. And so transferring through this microphone onto the flash card, then into my computer, edited it all up, made nice and sexy by the 58 mic, it puts you to sleep. Well, that's just an obtuse technique. Am I controlling exactly what you think about? Only because I'm making words. But I guarantee you, if I hum and did the it could do the same thing to relax you. But if I started playing, Bring the Noise by Anthrax and, Public Enemy, all of a sudden in the middle of this video, your blood rate would go up. You'd wake up and you'd be like, what are you doing? You're hurting my feelings. You're hurting my brain. The sycophant systemic quality of a military industrial complex and agencies above those agencies is that they go in all directions possible. The second they discover a paradigm of thought, a paradigm of science, they will go in the dark and they will go in the light. Think about all these viral centers where they create these horrible, protein viruses and normal viruses that kill human beings, all these biological weapons. We're constantly developing biological weapons. One, we create, the big CDC hoorah, CDC worship stories like Walking Dead is that, boy, the CDC is always on your side. It's an appointed body by a bunch of shills, full of a bunch of shills. And, there's good people and there's bad people. But if we're going to outlaw nuclear weapons or limit the amount of nuclear weapons in the world, we should have outlawed research into these areas. But the government knows that humans are humans. We outlawed in the United States and we cease creating these viruses and their antidotes. And then China will do it, or Russia will do it, or someone else will do it. I don't mean to blame anyone in particular, but it's like they'll continue doing it. And then they have the upper hand on us the second they drop something in our water supply. And, you can genetically modify something to say Asians don't get killed by this, Russians don't get killed by this, because there's one little thing in their protein patterns or whatever that we don't have as everyone else in the world, and everyone else dies. They just take the world. America's doing it probably more intensely than everyone else, so I don't mean to put anything on anyone's back. But then there is that realm that's hard to talk about because there are most likely technologies that we can't conceive of. Probably not that many. And maybe not for the deep thoughts crowd. Time travel's been romanticized because of this misinterpretation of a Q post, this Project Looking Glass thing. But boy, isn't it amazing how many people jump on the Project Looking Glass project without knowing the first thing about time travel? These geniuses, they'll say, man, the Project Looking Glass, first thing you gotta know about time travel is it's not linear. Okay, genius. If it's not linear, then you have nothing to fucking worry about. And you know why? Because all the realities that you're modifying are not ours. So fucking knock yourself out there, buddy. Walter Bishop. You're not going to affect our world. And I think it's funny that a lot of the fictional shows out there will, because of, and again, I totally support this in terms of a fictional television show or movie, because you just got to do what you got to do to make something have a little bit of cohesion. But oftentimes these multi-dimensional time episodes or whatever shows, they usually get up to 2 universes, and that's it. It's our universe and a parallel universe. And the parallel universe is hysterically funny from a scientific standpoint, because the second that you can conceive of a parallel universe, you must conceive of infinite parallel universes. You have to. And the idea that you would have a beef with just one parallel universe, if you created some ripple in time, some anomaly in the fabric of the universes or whatever, you'd have a problem across the board. Not just in this other one, right? But again, if someone tells you that the time ain't linear and that they transferred to Gettysburg Address and they got their photograph taken, I mean, it's like, where are these people come? It's fucking ingenious, man. In terms of entertainment and the sort of Ripley's Believe It or Not, it's a great story. It's a great story, but if it's not linear, then you left our universe, went and visited this Gettysburg Address, had your photograph taken in that universe, and then you came back to this universe and the photo doesn't exist because you didn't do it here. The only sexy time travel paradigm that is sexy and has threats to our existence and predicting the future and all this other crap would be linear time. There's one time, one dimension of existence, and all you're doing is going back and forth, which means right now, me sitting back here on my patio, someone should show up. Let's say my episodes go 1,000 years in the future, which they won't. But let's just say they did, and someone's like, oh my God, we found your show, and you were right about a bunch of stuff, and you're wrong about a bunch of stuff, and so we wanted to meet you. In fact, we just wanted to watch you do the show. They come back here, pull up a seat, do it to it, right? Not happening. For all this time travel, and I've digressed a little bit here, but it's kind of fun, extra thinking to dismiss things so that we can focus, okay? Is that, again, if they had time travel in a linear way, they'd be, or even in a multidimensional way, they'd be able to look ahead and go, okay, we want to blow up these 2 buildings in New York and knock this other one down, and then we're going to do all this other stuff on September 11th, 2001. Let's see all the problems that we've had. And then they just Groundhog Day the fuck out of this thing until they get it completely right. Just like Bill Murray in Groundhog Day eventually got the day. Or you look at Tom Cruise in Edge of Tomorrow, where he constantly has to get through this battle over and over and over and over again. And finally just gets it so right, it's like clockwork. Turn left, turn right. And even if something spirals out of his script, he's so good as a soldier, he just kicks their ass, right? Not happening in our universe, is it, man? We catch them the second they pull one of these FFs, right? So part of this sort of, and this would, I don't think this is going to, what I'm about to suggest isn't going to happen anytime soon. But it is good to remember the coup of Russia. I don't think a coup of Russia is going to happen in the near future at the level that they were able to get. And I remember watching videos back in the early 90s when this thing was going down. They showed the citizens of Russia raiding KGB facilities. And because they didn't have computerized databases for everything, there were these, the one video I saw, I still can't scrub it out of my mind, were these sort of, it's one of those walls with the little tiny cards inside the pull-out drawers. You see them in old movies where they pull out this drawer. It's like 3 feet out, and it's got those little tiny cards in it, like index cards. And they had alphabetized on this one wall, at least this is what the narration said in the video, that these individuals had lost their relatives a long time ago. They got captured by the government, and they simply disappeared. And they want to know where the hell their relatives went. And this wall for this particular region of Russia had all that information. So they're looking up the relatives and finding out, this guy was murdered. This guy was sent away as a soldier and then murdered. I mean, it was a horrific, but satisfying situation. So these individuals could get closure for the very first time. It's sad that had to be that way, right? That these individuals had to rush a building and do all that stuff because obviously it was a very unique moment in time where no one was getting paid in the military or the government. So they were like, yeah, go ahead and raid this joint. I don't care. I haven't seen a paycheck in 6 months. I don't see that happening in the current time, especially with a booming economy for the United States of America. And again, it's strange. I obviously am a very patriotic person, and I do trust that 99.999% of people in this country want nothing bad to happen to anyone else, not only here, but in every other country, right? We're indoctrinated here and there, but I don't like the idea that there's a world where death is coveted, meaning the mechanism by which to take a life with weaponry. Because they always sell it to you as, no, this is not for United States citizens. This is for anyone who tries to go up against us, which I guess in most cases is always the case. But the problem is if we don't fortify our voting system, our citizenship, especially our citizenship as it relates to voting, and if we don't lock down voting as an open source program in every single voting machine and lock down the ability for voter fraud, if we don't literally hang by a rope in public everyone that violates voting, that's what needs to happen. It needs to be a public exhibition. Break their fucking necks in public so that anyone else considering throwing the vote, no, you don't get a lethal injection. You get stripped down to your skivvies and you get hung in some public place. It needs to be horrific. because your name will go down the tubes as well. Your whole family will go down. Your mom's the one that stole all the votes. Yeah. Your dad's the one. Yeah. Well, I don't want to have anything to do with you. You got scumbag genes. Fuck off, man. That's what needs to happen to people who steal votes. And the reason why I'm making such an emphasis on this is that that's how the government gets taken over. How in 2000, America is the most amazing place on planet Earth. And by, September 12th, it sucks. It just got worse and worse and worse, right? We get fucking groped at airports. There's all kinds of like DUI checkpoints now, which is the most Gestapo fucking thing you've ever seen in your life, right? Spare me. The fucking uptick of that bullshit. Go in front of fucking bars if you want to catch people being drunk. Because of a few bad apples, we're all showing our papers. And if we don't want to show papers, then you get this good person who turns into a fucking Nazi. Get out of your car, blah, 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 blah. It's like, no, I'm a free fucking citizen, man. I'm not drinking. I don't even fucking drink. That shit on my breath is called a cigar, man. And luckily in Huntington Beach, that shit calmed down because we used to have them every fucking day, every weekend, every Friday and Saturday on Beach Boulevard, our main drag here. They'd line up in front of an In-N-Out burger. I would hate to be the business. I'd sue the fucking city and go, look, no one's coming into my restaurant because you've lined up this DUI checkpoint. They don't want to go through it. They don't want anything else discovered in their car that might be today's most popular reason to throw you in jail thing. But if we don't protect our vote and protect our country, which is what everyone swears to do when they become a police officer or a military person, and all those people, 99.99% of them would die for that cause, protecting our vote, then we can get a shill from the Bilderberg Group, from the EU. And then all of a sudden, this impossible scenario I outlined in this video suddenly becomes a win, not an if. Now, what blows me away, okay, is the situation where, and again, you listeners who live in Europe, you're my heroes because you guys are awake and you're fighting for it. And again, Britain, I couldn't pat everybody on the back who wants to get out of the EU. I mean, you'll find that in history, this was the most amazing decision that Britain made. I want them to let go of Ireland if they want to be let go. I want them to let go of Scotland if they want to let go. The vote needs to be protected, right? Because most people in Scotland believe that they actually voted themselves out of England control, British control, and it didn't happen. It was like, nope, we just gave you the vote because we didn't think you'd win, but you won, so now we have different thoughts, so you can't get out, but whatever. But the European Union is essentially the paint job on the car that is Agenda 21. This satellite thing will be a mechanism, if it hasn't already occurred, to put a bunch of stuff into space to control everyone down below. What's one of the most popular industries right now? SpaceX stuff. All right. Now, you can't blame SpaceX employees necessarily, except for maybe some of the fake shit they're doing. But, in the end, it's like, well, we're putting up a payload. They have told us where it needs to be. Their payload has to do whatever it needs to do. We're not on the hook for that. And we can't simply go, well, what is it? What are you putting in this payload? What does it do? And then get it all into the private business of that whole thing. Maybe that's a new standard we put up there. Obviously, SpaceX would not be able to put up an enemy satellite. That would be something they'd have to regulate. I'm sure there are covert people checking all that stuff out constantly. But this is something that the people are not paying attention to because most people can't conceive of it, just satellite technology in general. And there's plenty of people. I know that a bunch of you know the quotes from a bunch of famous people. And Von Braun talked about this supposedly with his assistant, who I believe she has her own PhD. But dominating space is going to be a huge thing. What did Von Braun also talk about? I didn't know this. I didn't remember this. And I think the interview that I saw a long time ago may have been abbreviated inside of maybe a Jeranism video or something. But he really talked about two cataclysmic false flags that they were going to engineer, in his opinion. And he seemed to, I mean, if this woman's telling the truth, and by God, she better be telling the truth, because she's creating hysteria if she's not. But, the one that we all know about is the fake alien invasion, which is a huge endeavor. And go see my episode on that exact subject. If you're interested, just go to deepthoughtsradio.com, look, or in this channel on YouTube, and search the word invasion, and you'll see it. That's a big one. That's ships, that's having to create some sort of alien being that is capable of communicating and thinking it has an agenda. I mean, it would be really just level 15 shit, right? On a scale of 1 to 10. But the other one was a meteor shower cataclysmic event. Now, some of you remember the meteor that flew over Russia and exploded and blew up all the windows. I think it's interesting that the Russian military czar guy came out and said, this was a weapon from the CIA just to show us what they could do. This is during Obama's administration. Now, we know there's Baghdad Bobs all over the place that will lie about all kinds of stuff. So who knows if that dude knew what he was talking about, intentionally lied to create propaganda or whatever. But it certainly coincides with an interview that happened decades before that event occurred, which is von Braun's secretary saying there was going to be technology that would create the illusion in space or in our skies that would look like asteroids falling out of space. And some, oopsie, it's a real big meteor shower. I just watched the, it's one of the Marvel Avenger movies that I had never seen. And it's the one where they invent the character Vision. And it's the one where the other robot, like Ultron or something like that, this robot lifted a city out of the ground. And his whole plan was to slam it back to the earth so fast that it would create a sort of an earth-killing situation. Now, I have tried to think about in my mind how that technology would work. Forgetting the Marvel movie for a second, but how do you, launch something into space and then hurl it into the atmosphere in a way that it behaves like a meteorite and then would have any level of impact when it hit? Because let's face it, we have a finite amount of equipment we can actually put up with one shot. And even if you attach it to itself, like let's say you put 4 or 5 things together, create one big thing, and then you put a rocket on the back or you do something to deteriorate its orbit, and here it comes back to the earth. The atmosphere is very powerful, which we saw when the Discovery satellite or space shuttle came back at reentry and burned up. Didn't hurt the earth at all. It's a pretty big ship. When you hear about the fictitious story of the volcanic explosion in Arizona, which they try to say is a meteorite, which it wasn't, they tell you that it was a meteorite about the size of a bus that hit the earth. Again, fully perpendicular to the earth's surface, as all fabled meteorites work. Never a Superman crater where it slides across the earth and creates an elliptical shape on the ground. Nah. Or even a chasm as it hit the ground and created none of that. All the moon's craters are perfectly circular, which should tell you something about what it's not. They're not meteorites. They're not craters for meteorites. They're craters for volcanic eruptions of a used to be really active interior. And again, I just would tell you, if you take this whole thing with the sort of Plato's time before the moon, and then you take the conspiracy theory that has very little movement in it, but it's the conspiracy theory that the moon is simply the old sun that burned out, and the only thing that happened was a new sun was put in place. But the old one's still up there, and that's why it's white as ash, which is what happens to things that burn. And all those little pockmarks are simply the old surface cooling off, and those little bubbles are just boom, blip, 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 in all different sizes, right? The big, chasms, I think Neil Adams has certainly proven to me that there's a lot of science that, when he takes the Sea of Tranquility and shrinks it out of existence, there are craters from volcanic explosions that are cut in half. And once he shrinks the Sea of Tranquility, the two halves come together perfectly. Well, that's pretty much proof those two sides used to be together, right? What are the fucking odds, right? There's, hundreds of them that come back together. Interesting. So anyway, I want you guys to think about that. Again, if you're a flat earther, there's no need for you to throw out the capability of putting a satellite into our upper atmosphere, traveling at approximately 17 to 30,000 miles an hour, depending on how much they push it, and it having a lot of volatile crap in it. So in the coming decade, from 2020 to 2030, I will assure you that the daily churn of things being thrown into space is going to exponentially grow beyond anything that you have ever witnessed in world history. What is Elon Musk saying about SpaceX? They're going to be putting hundreds of launches into space. Now he's talking about, pay attention to this Starship going to Mars. And then of course the Starship prototype just fell apart and fell down because the wind hit it. That guy sells vaporware. The crazy thing about Elon Musk, and I don't have anything against him personally. I think he and I'd probably get along great and have a really funny conversation, but he doesn't present well. I mean, he presents atrociously. He stutters and really has a hard time. And the weird thing about it is usually that coincides with selling bullshit. If someone says, well, tell me about your life, you might be, well, okay, sit down. Right? Got a beer? Good. Now, and it's your life. It's just, you're confident it happened. But when someone says, okay, tell me about, a theory you've barely thought up, or tell me a lie, just tell me a good lie. And then you'd be all over the map because you'd be constantly making it up as you go along, like most of the guests on Coast to Coast AM. Or was it the Alien Squad channel? Oh my God. So, beware of false prophets, man. It's funny. I get every once in a while. I had one about 3 months ago. Some guy came in the comments and he was like, oh man, you're a shill. I was like, oh boy. Every time you say shill, you take down your IQ like 10 points. Especially if you say it against me. It's just hilarious. Like, okay, dude, you haven't watched any videos for sure, right? But, for the hardcore listeners, that I come at things from every dimension of reality I can conceive. Literally, I have gone to the very outskirts of my brain and picked up a rock. That's shiny. Let's make an episode about this, And I'm sure that some of you get tired of some of these little topics that are just, are so esoteric you can't wrap your mind around them. And I'm sitting here talking about it for 2 hours. So, I don't want to create hysteria among the audience. I just want you to be heightened to what's going on. And imagine there is a crack in the armor of how your government is set up, and the opportunity were to arise where we were to vote on clandestine projects and clandestine agencies that hide technology. Area 51 being completely inaccessible by the people sort of pisses me off. It's like, hey, we understand you got some covert shit going on and you're making planes you don't want the enemies to know all about. But there's two ways to get rid of that problem. Fly the fucking things out of the base for a day. Take them to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. Take them to some other place we don't know about. Put them in a warehouse. Or just put them in the warehouse, close the door and say, there's a bunch of guards up there. If you walk past this red line, they've got the right to blow your brains out. And if you think they're joking and you're going to play it like the guards for the Buckingham Palace, that's why that paddy wagon's over there and there's no ambulances, because it's shoot to kill and they're not going to miss. And then just let people walk around the place. Say, okay, great. This is just a freaking Air Force base and there's buildings we have access to and buildings we don't have access to. But again, like I said in my episode about a month and a half before Trump announced Space Force, I suggested exactly that entity. It's really, from my mind, it blows me away that obviously it was in their camp for a while before it happened. But my whole thing was, you could have a spacecraft. What if you saw the SR-71 and no other country had it? In fact, no other country does have it. Okay, well, they've seen it. Why don't they have it? We've got a stealth fighter, stealth bomber. Well, everyone's seen it. Now, China ripped off the F-35, and they ripped off the one that was actually canceled, which I believe was Lockheed Martin's one, which I thought was a little sexier looking. But just because you see the exterior doesn't mean you automatically know how it works. You know, the fabric on the outside of the SR-71 was so special for absorbing radar technology that a bunch of people got sick making this stuff and using it. That's how complex the skin is on that stuff. So just having something painted black doesn't reveal the chemistry of the vehicle itself. So I think we've overblown, unless Bob Lazar's correct, but of course he's talking about S4, which is built into a mountain with mountain-looking doors that when the doors open up and they let things in and out, then it closes and it still looks like a mountain, if that even exists, right? So there's still that. But unless we literally have a UFO from an outside world, which everyone should be aware of, right? I mean, the government just has to take a picture of it from an angle that doesn't reveal anything. I mean, think about it this way. If, Bob Lazar is telling the truth, which I don't think he is because of his 2 degrees in 2 different places, and that would take up so much time in his life, it would register in his history. He would have alumni shirts from Boston. He'd have alumni shirts from Caltech. One does not get a PhD at a college without at least grabbing some tchotchkes, some swag, right? He has nothing. He has no photographs of being on that either one of the campuses. I think the guy's a bull-faced liar, but I think he's very creative and very entertaining. But let's just say he calls his UFO the space sports model. That's what I have landing in the backyard. All right. Okay, so let's say they have that thing. All right. Let's say they have it and they take a picture of it and they put it on the web and they announce that they've got a UFO and they've had it forever. They found it in a dig. They're not sure if it's from Earth or if it's from outer space or whatever. What does that do for anyone? Well, it makes a bunch of ufologists extremely happy, and me included, and probably a lot of you. But it doesn't tell us how it works, right? Bob Lazar supposedly talked about the element 115 and the antimatter engines. Okay, Russia's heard that. China's heard that. Everyone's heard it. Does anyone have UFOs working like that? No. So a picture of it's not going to hurt anything, which lends itself to it being a work of fiction. I make the point about the UFO because the Project Aurora, the triangle thing, which has been photographed how many times now, right? So you got a triangle. You take a picture of it. You take a picture of it flying. Right? We think we actually have real pictures of this thing. All right. It doesn't tell the Russians how we made it. You know? Now, if Obama was still president and he had access to it, he would have given it to China. That's what he did with all of our launch codes and everything else. He sold us out, man. And it will be written at some point in history. But this doesn't, this is why these covert programs make no sense. If we had anti-gravity, how impressed would you be? I mean, how mind-blown would you be in minutes and Earth time if the government said, yeah, here it is. Boop, 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 boom. Pretty cool, right? It's a little video we did in Area 51 or some other weird place. All right. Does it tell anybody how it works? No. And what if Russia was like, oh, we've had it too for, 55 years. And so they do their thing. And now we all know this technology exists. Well, does anyone have the balls to go, now you give it to me, man. I want a Blade Runner car. I want a Fifth Element car. No. They're perfectly fine with their government having that technology. At least we know now that it exists. If they've got a little alien in a warehouse playing poker, it'd be nice to see that, wouldn't it? So that's why I bring these subjects up, so we kind of pierce through the veil. But I think unequivocally in history, where technology is hidden, it is aimed at you. And that's why you're not allowed to know. So if there's a break in the chink of armor where we can rethrow the policies of the world, one country at a time, then let's do it. Let's get in there and let's bring it up to our friends and spouses. I mean, hell, an idea is something you can't kill, right? What if there's a big movement to declassify the entire planet? Let's all pretend like we're made equal instead of allowing certain people to covet stuff and become more than our equals because they could dominate us. I would think that there should be some global moratorium on mind control because no one has the right to do that. We're all sovereign beings. No one has the right to do that. Anybody who believes they can and should. Again, here's how I can sell you mind control. Ready? Should you be mind controlled? Ever in your whole life? I don't know. Maybe if you're going under surgery and you're all anxietied about your heart surgery, but it's the difference between you dying and you being alive. Maybe I can mind control you to feel good with it. Maybe you'd buy off on that. But overall, no, don't make me want to vote for Hillary Clinton. Don't ever do that to me. Okay, so you don't want that to happen to you. Maybe they make you a Manchurian candidate and kill your wife. So you go to jail because they want to frame you. And you wake up out of this thing, you got blood dripping all over, and you're like, what did I do? And they're like, hee hee hee. And the white van drives away from your house. You don't want that to happen, right? Okay. Now, pick your favorite boogeyman on planet Earth. Any race, any country, whatever you're afraid of. And now the military guy sits down in front of you. He's dressed to the nines, man. He's starched out. He's awesome. Got the crew cut. It's all good. He's on your side. Boy, you feel good he's on your side because he looks like a badass mofo. Or her. And they say, we're going to go over there to your enemy and we're going to make them all kill each other. Or we're going to make them love America or whatever. We can't put a specific thought about love America, so we're just going to go with this suicide depression algorithm and they'll just be wiped off the planet. It'll be a self-genocide. Now, most sane people would go, well, fuck no, man. I got to meet God at some point. You mean you're going to tell me this and then you're going to make me go to my creator thinking this is happening? This is horrible. But a ton of people would be totally for it, man. It's not them. It's not them. It takes you back that old saying, first they came for the so-and-sos and took them away and I didn't say anything. And then they came for the next group and they took them away and I didn't say anything. And then they came for me and there's no one left to protest. And so they took me away too. That's why we got to be careful. But what if there's no means to take anybody away? What if there's no means to do this kind of stuff to anyone? Maybe we have to get along a little bit better, but at least someone can't death ray us out of existence. Beware of the skies. How many of you know about chemtrails and want them to end? Jeez. If there was any metaphor for satellite technology screwing with your mind, screwing with the world, a chemtrail is the most perfect example of shit being sprayed over your house that you can't do anything with. And boy, they are still firing off like crazy under Donald Trump's administration. So someone has sold someone a bill of goods all the way to the tippy top. Maybe that one's, this Q shit that the CIA's been taking over and all their fucking supercomputers have been destroyed and the Big Bird satellite's been destroyed and all this other fucking horse shit. Oh yeah? Well then why the fuck do I have, chemicals sprayed in the sky and then everyone in my neighborhood gets a ripping throat, and if they don't take vitamin C, it falls into their lungs and they got 2 months of respiratory problems? Why do all the urgent cares in my neighborhood have chemtrail lung as the secret condition that everybody's suffering from when these things spray in the sky? Because it is extremely real. Why does every pilot I talk to say, yeah, it totally exists and it's not me, and you can't talk about them because it's worse than talking about a UFO sighting? Shit's real, man. Don't know why they think they're doing it. Bunch of theories. I know it makes us sick. No doctor or nurse knows what's in a vaccination, but they think it's, GMO your body. It's the best thing. Don't eat GMO foods, though. Be a totally crunchy vegetarian that doesn't eat GMOs, but go get all your shots because that's good. Man, I tell you, having a high IQ will save your life. Thinking will save your life. This is actually, if you think about it, in the 1800s, your lineage moving down, the only thing that would threaten your lineage would be a war or a plague. And today, it's just simply picking the wrong food. Eating too much sugar substitutes, brushing your teeth with fluoride, all these things, microwaving your food, all these things add up exactly like the plot to the 1989 Batman movie that Tim Burton put out. It was the combination of products in your house that would make you die. Boy, you put it right on the point, showed everybody in the world, and nobody got it. Well, that's a fictional story. Yeah. That's why a record number of people are dying of cancer. That's why children at a record level are getting cancer. I was just at the lounge yesterday, 2 days ago. Guy came in with his wife. He's a great dude. He comes to the lounge all the time. And I just happened to rattle off a little too quick the optimism I have about curing a particular instance of cancer in a particular individual. And you can catch it again. You can always catch it again. Got to change your habits, right? But any instance you have, go watch my cancer episode. There's a million ways to cure it. That particular instance you have. And then he said something like, my brother died 2 days ago of cancer. And I was like, oh, shit. And of course, they don't want to hear about cures at that point because they're like, I don't want to hear that he could have lived. And so, got to have the courage to get the cures when we can. He walked out of there completely unequipped to save his own life from cancer because it's too much of a slap in the face that he lost a relative to it. I just lost one to it too. So anyway, hope you feel me. I am going to do a short bumper today. And by the way, I'm conceptualizing a common bumper to this, but I really hate those totally, flying around, click here and do subscribe, hit the bell and all that stuff. It's just not the style of the show. So I do these manually, but it also lets me insert updates if there's anything happening on the website or how we handle the show in general. So I keep these manual. So I know a lot of you probably start dialing out when I say this. Some of you know I have digressions after the trailer, or after the bumper at the end, but that's not very often. So we have a website, deepthoughtsradio.com. It's the hub. If we ever get crushed anywhere, you're going to want to know that URL if you like the content, because it'll always get you to the next place. We have 2 video, all the audio you could ever digest. Again, your feed won't go all the way back to the season 1 unless you can control your software to say go all the way back, go more than 300 back. But iTunes will only go 350 or so. So if you're going through iTunes, you may need to go up to the website and get it live. That way you get all the rest of them. So just be aware of that. We have Facebook, Twitter, minds.com. You can donate through PayPal. You can become a Patreon subscriber, which means you get it before everyone else, as well as you get a 20% discount on the store. 2 products I want you to have, Brave and Backblaze. It's a browser and backup software. Go check it out. It's all beautiful and very inexpensive. All the season 1 episodes are on a different channel. The link is up there. It's because I use music and the record industry destroyed the first season's ability. Plus the censorship on top of that's crazy. There is a store. I got brand new shirts out for this season. They will be unavailable by the end of the season. Even if I continue making episodes throughout the summer, you won't be able to get those shirts anymore. So this is going to be your Chowski to say, I was there. I got the shirt. So if you got season 3 shirt, I forgot to make one for 4. I apologize. Maybe I'll make a 4 on the side. But anyway, take care of yourself and someone else, and I will see you in the next Deep Thoughts. Over now.